Hey up! Now then, how are you doing? Good morning or good afternoon or good evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are in this wonderful world of ours. Welcome back to the Yorkshire Bike Mechanics YouTube channel. My name's Dave K. I hope you're all well. And we have a humdinger of a video today. I'm back in the workshop, getting the hands dirty, getting stuck in, which is where I like it. So, in this video we have a 2017 Cannondale Matera. So not one problem, two problems, but potentially four problems that could be related, they might not be related. So it's our job together to try and find out what's going on. The customer has given us a brief as to what he's experiencing and when and where, and so our job is to try and sort it out. So a humdinger of a video, let's get stuck in and let's crack on. So here we are, here's the bad boy. This is the Cannondale Matera. It's a 2017 model. It's got the Bosch BDU2 motor in it. Most 2017 models will have that motor in there. And the customer's brought in for two reasons. First of all, the main reason which he said is why he's brought it in is, first of all, he says the motor's noisy. He says there's a lot of bearing noise and he can hear it while he's riding. So that's the first thing that we need to look at. The second thing that he's telling us what's going on is saying that the display, the Purion display, is just going off on its own and coming back on its own. It's very intermittent. He can't actually describe when it's actually doing it. There's no particular rhyme or reason why this could be doing it. And so this is an intermittent fault. Why it's going off and coming back on, and at this point I have no idea. It could be a faulty Purion display, it could be a faulty battery connection, it could be a faulty wiring harness. There's lots of different reasons why that could actually go off and on. And again, what we need to do basically is plug it into Bosch Diagnostics. Let's take a look at what we've actually got, what it's actually saying, and then we can go from there. Now, going back to the bearing noise, it is really, really noisy. You can take a listen. That's probably about as noisy as they get. And that is that is pure and simple bearing noise. At some point water's got in, the bearings have got damaged, and that's what the noise is. Now the bike, apart from the Purion display cutting in and out, when it is running, the bike runs okay. And so we've got a bit of a dilemma really, because do we potentially look at overhauling this particular motor? It is a BDU2, and I can overhaul these and I can put new bearings in them and it'll be as quiet as a mouse when I finish with it. But what I don't want to do is I don't want the customer to go to the expense of doing that if we're going to get errors, if the motor is causing the display to kick in and kick out. If that's the case, we might as well buy a new motor. But what we need to do is we need to find out what's actually causing what. It could be related, it might not be related. So the best thing to do is let's plug it in first. We'll look at the diagnostic report and we'll see what we've got. So here we go. So the main thing that's of interest in this diagnostic report is the diagnostic faults that it's actually currently showing. Now I'm actually surprised because one of the faults, which is 530001, is a battery authentication fault. Now the customer actually mentioned to me at this point that he'd actually bought another battery from eBay. So is it possible then that this particular battery has been tampered with and it's not a Bosch battery? The other one, which is a major concern to me, is the software error within the drive unit. What we actually can do with this, first of all, we need to take a look. Is it potentially that the firmware is not valid? Is it a corrupt firmware? And what we need to do is we need to force a new firmware or the original firmware to that particular drive motor. So what I've basically done is we've uploaded the software to the battery and we've uploaded some new software to the motor. I've taken the battery off and taken a look, and it actually does look like a genuine Bosch battery. I don't know whether you can actually see that, if I can focus in. It does actually say that it's a genuine Bosch battery. It doesn't look as if it's been tampered with either. The screws are nice and clean. It doesn't look as though it's been opened before. So let's plug it back in and let's see what it's actually saying at the minute. From that diagnostic that you've just seen on the computer, we've managed to force an update for the battery, which seems to have cleared the error. We've also forced an update for the motor as well, which has also cleared the error that you saw earlier on the earlier diagnostics. We've switched the bike on and the error is not appearing on the display either. So that leaves us with a little bit of a situation. Although we think this might be resolved and we've sorted everything out, what can happen, and which does happen quite often, is that particularly on the internal software error, you can be riding along and all of a sudden it'll come back, and that happens quite a lot. So again, that leaves us with a predicament, because what do we do with this motor? Do we take the plunge and take it to bits and put new bearings in there and refresh it and put another side on like you've seen in his other videos? I'll put a link on the top that you'll probably see now to that one where we've refreshed the side. Or do we potentially buy a brand new motor and do it that way and know that the motor then is going to be all right? I think the other thing that I need to do is double check the connections on the motor side to make sure that they are nice and clean and are solid and actually lodged right where they're supposed to be. I had a look at the connector battery when I took the battery out, and that seems really clean. There's no green gunge on there, which you sometimes see on electrical connections. It looks pretty clean, and so I've put that back. So let's have a look at the connections on the side of the motor and we'll go from there. So if we get a torch and we have a look, and we can have a look at the condition of these cables. They look all right, and they're nice and snug in the place. There's nothing loose, nothing untoward there that I can see. So they look all right. Where do we go from here? Do we take the motor out and overhaul it inside and put new bearings in and everything else? Or do we ride it for a while and see if them errors come back? Now that we've actually forced a firmware update, do we see if they've come back? In which case, at that point, do we then change the Purion display out to see if that solves it? Does the motor error, is that going to come back? Because if that comes back, then obviously we're looking at a new motor rather than overhauling it. We don't want our customers to waste all that money. So I think my recommendation is for me to put this back together, take it for a little bit of a ride, see if I can get these errors to come back, turn it off and on and turn it off and on again, and just see where we actually go from there. So I'm going to put it together, I'll take it for a ride, and I'll come back and let you know what I've discovered. Okie doke, right. So before we got out the door, we had an error appear on the display, on the Purion display. So we didn't even get a chance to take it out for a ride before that error came back. So let's plug it in and we'll see what error that is, and then we'll go from there. What we need to do now basically is decide where we go next with this. I think the installation or the replacement of the original battery, I think that will sort that original authentication error out. What concerns me is this error that keeps popping up within the motor's internal software error. And as I said before, this is a little bit of a tricky one to solve out. So what we need to do, we need to decide now, obviously the motor's noisy, you've heard it. So the question now we need to ask ourselves is, do we split the motor up and do we replace all the bearings and give it an overhaul and make it nice and quiet again? Or do we bite the bullet and do we say, no, let's not do that, let's buy, or let's give the customer an option of purchasing a new motor, which will completely eradicate the future issues of software errors. I think the customer is the only one that could decide what the next step is. I'm going to advise the customer probably to maybe replace the motor. I don't want him getting into a load of expense 2 weeks down the line and getting this software error message again after we've put like 350 quid into this motor. I think it might be beneficial to replace it. The other issue is that it is a 2017 bike, and if he really likes it, does he want to go to all that expense of putting a new motor in it, or does he want to look at a newer bike with a Bosch Gen 4 or a Gen 4 smart motor in there? That is another option that we need to discuss with him. So we're not completely out of the woods with this, depending on what the customer wants to do. So let me jump on the phone, let me have a word with him and let him decide what's next to do, and I'll come back in a second. Now don't be laughing, because you might think that he's either painted his arms white or he's got some kind of disease. Well, neither, because I've got my thermals on today. It's pretty chilly, 1 degree this morning, so I thought, right, I'm going to get warmed up. So if you remember last time we spoke about this Cannondale Matera, we were going to have a discussion with the customer about what he wants to do. Bearing in mind the faults that we were getting, the cost of the overhaul, and everything else that were kind of rolling into one, were the deciding factor that the customer wants to replace the motor with a new one. So here it is, 2 years warranty on this motor, 719 quid, but he loves the bike and this will solve all his issues. So what we need to do now is get it out the box and get it in the bike, tested, and then he can have it back. So let's get on with it. So new motor out of the bike, on the bench, ready for a new one to go back in. So when we get a new motor from Bosch, this is how they come. I'll show you. They come in a really nice little tidy box. Really well packaged.
It's fairly quiet.
Everything in here that we'll need, including new fittings, new lock rings, new Bosch cover that some people lose or they drop off, new bracket as well if we need it, and then again a new lock ring, and there'll be a rubber there as well, the rubber roller, that's in there. And we've got all the instructions and the manuals, put that to one side. That leaves us with the big bad boy right down at the bottom. There she is. There she is, a brand new BDU2 motor. Now this is not refurbished, this is a brand new unit straight from Bosch, as you can see there. 719 quid's worth fitted. So it's the reverse of the procedure. You can't go wrong, and it'll only go in one way. Obviously we know where the connections are going, so it actually drops down in the frame. Now the only thing that we need to be careful of, these existing connections and cables, we don't want to be trapping them. And then we can just bob the battery in. And make sure we're all up and running. The moment of truth. There she goes. That will not give any errors because obviously we've got a brand new motor in there, so that solves his issues. So yeah, good result I feel. In the end, customer got the right decision, I think, putting a new motor in there, gets 2 years warranty. I know it were a bit an expensive do at $719, but I think that's probably the right thing to do. He does love the bike, and for him it's worth actually doing that. So I hope you enjoyed that. Please subscribe if you've not already. It does help support the channel. We'll love you watching. Please leave your comments, and I'll speak to you soon. Toodle pip.